Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sonya. Here on my channel we have healthy discussions about life, love, dating, and relationships while promoting self-love and healing. Tonight we're going to talk about Roe versus Wade. Now I've recorded this video a few times and hopefully this time is a charm, right? Third time is a charm. Yes. I just want to talk about it being overturned and talk about some healthcare aspects that are concerning to me being a healthcare professional. I'm not going to go too much into my personal views, especially religion, just because I feel like religion is sacred. And that isn't something that I truly argue on a platform. And I know once you put information out, people consume it how they want to consume it, and then people have their thoughts, views, and perspectives on your thoughts, views, and perspectives. And that's just not a conversation that I want to have. I do think, though, that healthcare is very important, and I believe this is a healthcare procedure, and we're talking about abortion, which is what Roe versus Wade was a law regarding. This is a healthcare procedure, and there are at times medical necessities for this procedure. This is a procedure that must be done in a medical setting by medical professionals, and there are healthcare risk side effects for having, and in some cases for not having the procedure. So I kind of want to talk about that, and then what to do from this point, because honestly the decision has been made. I don't think or see the Supreme Court overturning this position. I think in some ways, on top of all of the other agendas or reasonings or whatever you want to say, whatever term that's going to be used for the reasoning for the overturning of Roe versus Wade, I think the Supreme Court doesn't want to deal with it anymore. It's a topic that comes up every election, and I think this in some ways is freeing to them. I think it's multifaceted. I think the other reasons are at play as well that are popular, but I also think this is something that they're like, this isn't for us to handle. And if we're going to be honest, the procedure is just that. It is a medical procedure, right? So this is part of healthcare. And so when we talk about healthcare, we don't debate any other healthcare procedure. Now, I know that there is the conversation about pro-life, but when you say pro-life, that means you are for life, right? You are fighting for the life and the rights of people to live. However, we're in the middle of a war. Okay. And we've had some recent mass shootings where people have lost their lives. In fact, people lose their lives, have poor life outcomes all the time. It is a constant and a consistent, and it makes me think, like, why isn't there that much advocacy for these individuals? Now, everyone has the right to choose their passion. I just find it interesting when we say pro-life, and other lives can be at risk and that not be addressed, like people who are actually here, who are actually living. And that's not to take away from any life. It's just to say that if we're advocating for life, let's just advocate for life. Let's advocate for not losing women and children and men and sons and fathers and mothers at war. Let's talk about, like, there's so much we could talk about when we talk about life, when we talk about proper health care, because there are people who are dying due to a lack of proper care. So, and the overturning of Roe versus Wade will impact that as well. Roe versus Wade was enacted in 1973, and it gave women the constitutional right to have an abortion. There were married couples who wanted the right to regulate their own contraception. There were family members couples who no longer wanted to have children and they didn't have birth control available. And then it became a topic for single women. There were cases of sexual violence that led to pregnancy, incest that led to pregnancy. There were, and there still is, the issue of medical necessity for the mom because the mom's life was at risk. Again, when we talk about pro-life, this is another individual's life who's at risk, and the pregnancy is the cause for the risk. So there are states that are conservatives and have what's called a trigger law where they banned all abortions for any reason. So if there is a sexual assault that leads to pregnancy, if there is illness, or if there is a fetal demise, that the procedure cannot be done. It was against the law to do the procedures. Physicians were at risk of losing their license and going to jail for performing the procedure. Women were put in jail for having the procedure. Anyone caught performing the procedure would be imprisoned. Also, there were some states, and these are conservative states, that would not allow you to cross the state line, right? I find it very interesting that conservative parties that are against having this procedure done has state laws that regulate this procedure and state that women cannot have the procedure. But one of their core principles is freedom, is individual freedom. It's freedom as an individual to make decisions for yourself and the government not to intervene. So I find that to be very interesting. They also believe in equal rights, and I find that interesting. And then there's also the conversation about the right to bear arms. And while I'm not going to go into my thoughts on guns and gun control, we have just recently lost a lot of individuals due to guns, and there isn't a lot of protest against that. So there isn't a protest to help those who are in medical need, not just for this procedure, but just in general. So there, to me, are a lot of inconsistencies. If you are a conservative state that does not believe in the government regulating your life, how is it that this medical healthcare concern and procedure is being regulated by the government? So that is the question I have. So getting back to this, overturning the procedure basically means that the government gets to mandate it. Some states have different laws. So what I would strongly encourage you to do is learn the law of your state, and learn your representative's view on those laws. This is an election season, so we need to really start digging in there. There's also the aspect of healthcare, and I really want to get into that as a healthcare professional. Again, I stated this procedure is a healthcare procedure. This is a medical procedure. I don't know of any other medical procedure that is being regulated and mandated by the government. The quality of care is regulated and mandated by government. The equipment and safety concerns are regulated and mandated by the government, but not medical procedures that I am aware of. So this is the only medical procedure that is the government has involvement in, which in some ways I think that's some of the reason why Supreme Court is trying to let this go, because it is a medical healthcare concern, and there isn't anything else that is regulated. Again, I do think the other reasons are valid as well. I think they play as well. I think there are multiple agendas, so understand that. But let's talk about the health of the mom, right? This procedure isn't just performed for individuals who no longer want to carry a child. This procedure is also performed for individuals who have major health care issues, such as fetal demise, intrauterine fetal demise, which basically means the baby is no longer alive. And that could be due to preeclampsia, that could be due to gestational diabetes, that could be due to placenta abnormalities. There are various reasons why there may be a fetal demise. And then the procedure removes the baby, and we used to talk a lot about stillborns. We know that stillborns in women of color is prevalent, studies say. And so how would what is a woman to do if they are carrying a child who is no longer alive? But I feel like we really need to have that conversation as well, especially when there's strong blanket statements that says that no one can have this procedure. So I think the health of the woman is also very important, again, because we're talking about pro-life. The argument is pro-life. So if the argument is because this procedure shouldn't be done because it's pro-life, because you're pro-life, because this is a matter of fighting for the rights and the life of an unborn child, then what about if the child is no longer with us, right? What is the mom to do? What about the life of the mom? So there's concern there, and there's a lot of room to have that conversation. So I also want to say, though, that the climate of healthcare has changed since 1973. In 1973, healthcare was very much a physician dominated field. It was very much a male dominated field. So if you were in a conservative state, it was kind of like the good old boys club type deal, because doctors were held in a very, very high regard. There was also the case that physicians who were in these states, if they performed these procedures, that they could go to jail. So we're talking about freedoms. We were taking freedoms away for performing this procedure, and physicians had concerns about that. So there were multiple concerns regarding these laws, and these laws being put in place or not put in place in just the discussion period. What I would say now is healthcare is more patient-centered. Hospitals are paid based on patients' performance outcomes in healthcare. And then now we really strongly advocate for patients' rights. Now, the healthcare system isn't perfect. However, again, it is patient-centered. So you as a patient, you have the right to care. There is a thing called Patient Bill of Rights. And in the Bill of Rights, you have the right to care, you have the right to privacy, you have the right to procedure. You have the right to work with your physician or your medical provider to determine what your medical care is going to be. Your voice is now required in healthcare, whereas once upon a time it was whatever the doctor says goes, and that is no longer the primary culture of healthcare. Now there are some rooms for some growth there, but healthcare is no longer dominated by just the physician's thoughts. So it is time to use your voice. And this is what I want to get to. It's time to take our power back, ladies. It's time to advocate. It's time to speak out. It's time to become informed and educated as far as what to do, what you have the right to do. And it's time to not listen to what you're being told, but being knowledgeable about your own care, your own rights. Okay. So what can we do? Because the law is now overturned and it's back in the state's hands, right? So midterm elections are coming up, and it is time for you to become a informed and active citizen. In my opinion, this is just my opinion. You need to start with knowing what is your state law on this procedure as it stands. Okay, what does your state say about this procedure? Is it a trigger state, meaning that you can absolutely not have this procedure no matter the circumstances, or are there laws in place for different trimesters? So there's some states where in the first trimester you can have the procedure, in the second trimester you can't have the procedure, or when you can have appeal versus the actual procedure. And what does that mean? There are a lot of verities are out there. So it's important to kind of know what your state says. What is your state law? Next, find out who your state representatives are. Who are they and what do they believe? How have they voted? You can see their track record. You can look up how they voted on these topics in the past. So find out their thoughts and their views. Start going to town hall meetings. Start being very active. Write your senator. Write your representative. It's time to speak out. Speak out on the platforms that are provided for you, and use your voice, right? Use your voice and advocate for yourself. Vote your interest and not your party, because your party doesn't always have your best interest. And that is one thing that bothers me. Sometimes we jump on the party train and our interests are left on the table. And now here we stand. So vote your interest and not your party. What aligns with your life and what is really truly important to you. Okay. Sometimes we get caught up in sound bites and we let those sound bites drive us, which is an intentional tactic. Don't listen to the sound bites. Do your research the same way we learn and research everything else. The new shoes that's coming out, the new iPhone that's coming out, new hairstyle, how to install, how to braid, all of these things that we spend so much time learning about. It is time for us to do the same as it pertains to our rights. So you need to know your rights, know your state rights, know your representatives, and make it to the polls in November. Advocate for yourself. Don't necessarily listen to everyone else. And I've said that. Also, contact your insurance company to see if this is a procedure that they cover. What would that mean with insurance companies? Again, so much has changed. There's usually a lot of loopholes. I know there's a lot of talk about race, and I'm going to touch on it a little bit, not too much. But I want to also say there's a huge socioeconomic factor here too. This isn't just about race. This is also about, access to healthcare. And even with the availability that we have, there are still a lot of people who don't have healthcare, who can't afford healthcare, so, or who has access to healthcare that doesn't necessarily meet all of their needs. So there's that conversation about how do these state representatives manage, or what do they feel about healthcare and your rights to healthcare, and find out what your rights to healthcare are, and find out what your insurance company thinks, what they cover, what's available to you. So that's important. Lastly, I'm going to say it's time to manage your uterus. I've heard so many women say, well, he doesn't want to wear a condom. Listen, you no longer have that to fall back on. We don't know what this means for contraception in the future. I don't think it's going to impact it, but you never know. So you have to do your due diligence. You guys need to have conversations before sex about what does this mean? What if we get pregnant? I've always found that to be an important conversation. If we get pregnant, what are we going to do? Right? Because condoms do break, and sometimes you may miss your pills, or sometimes you're taking medications that interact with your pills. Some people can't take birth control. With all that being said, you really need to do your due diligence and have that conversation. The hookup culture has made it so that people just have sex without really thinking about it. It's time to get back to really thinking about it. So this is not just about getting a disease or getting pregnant. This is about your overall healthcare. You may not be able to go and have a procedure to terminate pregnancy if it is a unwanted pregnancy. So it's time to have that conversation. It's time to make some requirements. You may have to require that your husband or your long-term mate have a vasectomy. I know a lot of women who don't want to have that conversation. It is time to use your voice. If they care about you, if they're for you, they're going to do things to help you. Okay? This is a help for you. And men who don't want to get involved, please know that a lot of these conservative states, they do require you pay child support. So child support is about to go up. You have to pay for these children, okay? And the manosphere has everyone already up in arms about single mothers and not wanting to pay for children and things like that. Like, everybody's not Nick Cannon and have the finances to pay for multiple children. But I'm here to tell you that you will still have to pay child support. Okay, so this impacts you as well. This is not just a woman's issue. This is a issue or a topic that impacts all of us. Okay, so it's time for male contraception. We need to have that conversation more. Okay, another thing that has changed is now more than ever we have men who have penile implants, and you have access to Viagra and other medications that help with ED. But what does that mean? A lot of y'all want to date these younger women. They're fertile, but you don't want any more children. All of these are conversations that need to be had. You can't pretend not to want to have them anymore. There are women who've been told that they cannot get pregnant, and then if they get pregnant. I remember back in the day, I used to hear so many people say, my doctor said I couldn't get pregnant because my uterus was tilted. And then 6 months later, they were pregnant, right? They end up with several children. So that is not always the case. There are some women who thought they were in menopause and couldn't get pregnant and got pregnant. It's time to learn about sexual health. Educate yourself about sexual health. Learn how long the sperm lives. And this is where I will like to say call to action to fellow healthcare workers. It's time for us to help educate the public as well, because public education on health isn't common, on sexual health isn't common. We can say be celibate, abstain, but that's just not reality. I am one to live in reality. I may not always agree with you and what you want to do, but the reality is what the reality is. So you have to meet the person and the people where they are. And everyone is not going to abstain from sex. For some people, sex is a coping mechanism, right? Alcohol is a coping mechanism too. You don't see them saying, let's take all the alcohol away, right? So for some people, sex is a coping mechanism. For some people, they're married. This is part of being married. They're in partnership. This is part of partnership. We are humans. We have desires. We want to be touched and loved on. Okay. And although everyone isn't doing it in a healthy manner, it's being done. So I'm not going to go with that blanket statement to abstain or become celibate, because it's just not reality, And so with that, what else is out here? What other options are here? It is time to become a informed individual. It's time to start having conversations, and it's time to start advocating for your health and for your rights as a citizen. It is time to require that the people who say they are for you are really truly for you. So those are my thoughts. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, whether you agree or disagree. Again, we can respectfully agree to disagree, okay? If you don't agree with what I'm saying, I really just want to offer food for thought and to advocate for people to advocate for themselves. That's really what I have to say. All of my personal views, y'all, I can go on and go in, but I'm not going to do that. But I want to say there are individuals who really do need this procedure. There are times where this procedure is a necessity. It isn't a form of contraception only. So I want that to be said. So please like, share, comment, and I will see you on Self-Love Sundays. And please take care, be well, and don't forget to love yourself for who you are. Take care. Bye-bye.